to be honest, apart from my voice and
Hmm.
some little guitar atmospherics and some like tiny little keyboard atmospherics in the beginning. Oh, and I did at the end where I do those little ad libs on the piano, I did play that on a proper piano. And so that's what happened.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I'm Adam. Very nice to meet you. I'm super excited to talk with you today.
Hi, Adam. Yeah, nice to talk to you too.
Well, this is a podcast all about you, your journey in this music industry, and we'll dive real deep into this new album, which the songs I've heard thus far are fantastic. I don't know, the whole thing isn't out quite yet, right? There's five.
Yeah, I think there's 5 songs out now, and then the
Yeah.
whole album comes out April the 26th. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's coming up. I didn't have the date here.
Yeah.
But awesome. Very, very exciting. So,
Yeah.
um, we'll just do a brief kind of origin of you. So you're born and raised you're Welsh, right?
Yeah.
Cardiff.
Welsh, there we are then. Yes, Cardiff in Wales. That's where I was born.
What was that like? Tell me about growing up there.
It's great, just there was always music in the house. My dad played jazz piano in an amateur jazz band and
Hmm.
um a great childhood, very simple, no phones in those days. So all we did was
Sure.
be outside and play music and hang out with friends. And yeah, I really, Cardiff and Wales is even though I live in America, that I still feel I'm Welsh.
That's amazing.
Very
And
important.
yeah, because you live in New York now, or you moved.
Yes, upstate New
Okay.
York. Yeah.
That is awesome. So dad was in a jazz band. Did you go see him perform often as a kid or anything like that?
I did, and when they used to rehearse together, and they were all amateurs. My dad always, played, from when he was very, very young, but he grew up um with they couldn't afford to send him for piano lessons, so he self-taught himself. So he played by ear, and yeah, so I used to go and see him play. And sometimes, then when I was around about 13, I would get up and sing a song or two with them.
Wow.
In much I was yeah,
Did
which
they
was
do originals or a lot of cover songs
oh,
or
it was very like old style jazz.
okay.
I mean, grew up listening to a lot of bossa nova, um, Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah
Mhm.
Vaughan and all those kind of things, but they were very much a traditional jazz outfit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the covers.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool. And you started piano young. Was that your first instrument?
Yeah, I started when I was about 6.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I my next door neighbor was a piano teacher actually, and so I had lessons with her for a while.
That's
And
convenient.
it was convenient. But then I moved on, and then I hated it. I remember going to a piano teacher who I remember bringing a jazz piece that I was playing with my dad, and she was so horrified um, that I brought that piece. She said, it's not classical music. So that was it for me. I left. It was,
That's weird. I've heard that story a handful of times where people will go to a piano teacher and say, "Oh, I want to learn this song." Maybe it's a song they heard on the radio or something that they're interested in learning.
yeah,
And the teacher's like, "No, you need to learn, this classical piece."
yeah.
And instead of I feel like if you were a piano teacher and embrace that, you could you could make a lot of money.
Exactly. And I think it's changed now when I look at, I mean, when I went to music college and then I did a year teacher's training, I
Mhm.
came out of college knowing I didn't want to go into school to teach because I was singing with bands by then. And I had about 25 flute and piano pupils that I used to teach.
Wow.
I was very open-minded with all that, and I see it with my son growing up having piano lessons here. His teacher was amazing. It was all about classical music and learning the technique, but
Mm.
um, she was open to original pieces and jazz. And so, but, and I mean, that was a good experience for me because I realized, hang on a minute, that's not for me. I was probably about 11, and then I stopped going to lessons for a couple of years because I was kind of done. But then
Mhm.
I found another great teacher, to
So
sort of.
then you continued, didn't you? You took piano in college, correct? And you also you play flute.
Yeah, and it was funny, to get into music college, you had to have two instruments. So I didn't take up the flute till I was, I don't know, like 16, maybe 2 years before I went to college. And so I got into the Welsh College of Music and Drama.
Mhm.
And then I saw how amazing these pianists that are in college with me were, and I thought, oh my God, like I am nowhere near that standard. So I switched my instrument. So flute became my first instrument, and piano became my second. And because
I'm fascinated that you didn't go in as a vocal.
I
Um,
but because really I only started singing, when I was, even though, growing up in Wales, every school has a choir, and it's, we celebrate March the 1st, St. David's Day, with a lot of Eisteddfods, which are all about the arts, poetry, music. So we were always singing, but
mhm.
I didn't start really singing until I was about 14. And I suppose I just never thought of myself as a voice major in any way. And in those days, to go in to do a major in college, I mean, it was classically based. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Sure.
um, I never thought about that, even though I was singing in college with various groups of people. Um, I did my training, and then it was, then being in bands and stuff full
Mhm.
time. It's like, this is what I really want to do.
Okay. And did you play in bands or anything prior to going to college, or was it just mainly the
Yes, yeah,
school stuff? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, nothing that you'd know of. Do you know what I mean? But they were
Right.
all
Like
local bands in Cardiff, and
originals? Were you playing your own songs at that point?
yeah, they were all
Wow.
originals. And then after I finished college, that's when I joined a 10-piece cover band who were pretty amazing. And we would do all the sort of big, if Prince Charles came to Cardiff City Hall, or the big,
No way.
the
Oh, wow.
Queen, or any of those big functions, that band that I was in was always the band that they would hire. And so,
Wow.
it's a brass section, three vocalists. And, I tell young kids all the time, I mean, it's really where you cut your teeth, where you do your apprenticeship, because, you're given, right, these are the songs we're going to do at this show. There's no rehearsal. You learn them. You're doing the lead on that. You're doing the harmonies on that. And we would do a sound check, and then we would do it, and it was a wide range of music.
Mhm.
So it was amazing experience. So we did all the Welsh national rugby events. It was a lot
Wow.
of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like you got some really big gigs in that band. I mean, to play for the
Yeah, yeah.
Queen and yeah, and these rugby matches and everything else. Were you the singer in that, or did you play flute or
Yes,
piano? Oh,
no
singer.
singer. But
Awesome.
did lots of, like, loads of different style bands, in the old days. And some, I played keyboards and flute and sang, and then this particular one was just singing. And then after that, then I did all the piano bar circuit, in Europe, which was just
Mm.
me at the piano for 5 hours a night, which
Wow.
yeah, it was a great experience, because that way I could introduce some of my original songs, and I would try and do certain covers that wasn't the norm for the piano bars. Like, I always like to do some Kate Bush or Ricky Lee Jones. Meanwhile, somebody would come along and say, could you play Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf? And
Yeah. Billy Joel or something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So I did a lot of that as
Right.
well, but
Sure. But you
yeah.
could sneak in your own songs and do cool stuff like Kate Bush. Not that the other ones aren't cool, but
Yeah. No, and it was just it was good practice of really finding my voice. First of all, you're doing 5 hours a night for 6 nights a week for 2 months. And
wow.
so you learn, and it's just you and a piano, so it's different than being with a band, but you learn how to look after your voice and how to make it last,
Mhm.
that length of
Yeah, that's
time.
a long time to be singing, especially 6 nights a week. Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
But
And
that's
from
like,
and then but, like, outside of the playing these piano bars and doing these, those type of gigs, when were you recording your own music? Like, how do you eventually kind of break out of that to, getting this record deal and putting out your first album and obviously having such a massive hit that was, to this day still
oh,
you still hear all the time, you know what I mean?
so great. During those times of the piano bars, that's when I would come home, I had like a little setup of the Tascam 8-track tape recorder, uh,
Mhm.
which I still have. I start off with a 4-track, and then I had my Korg M1, I had the DX7s and the old keyboards first, and I progressed to the Korg M1, which really stimulated, I Love You Always Forever. And then I had my little Alesis sequencer and everything. And so when I wasn't doing the piano bars, I was writing and recording at home and sending demos off to record labels in England. And, we had good comments, but I didn't have anything. And it's the way I got my deal, oh my gosh, that's another like episode in itself because it's kind of an interesting story. But to cut a long story short, I came over to Woodstock actually and met up. I was introduced to Robbie Dupree and I was playing my songs and my demos, and one of them was I Love You Always Forever. And of course, I recorded all this in my home in Birmingham. So they were, and I tell people it was great because I was doing it all myself. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that particular song was just one of those songs that it just came together really, really quickly. And all the sounds were from that Korg M1. And I'm probably digressing now because, as I say, it's with that song, it's such a long story behind it. But anyway, my tape got in the hands of Jen Stark and at Atlantic. She was A&R at Atlantic, and she heard the song, and then Jason Flom and Doug Morris heard it and wanted to fly me over. And I'm doing these piano bars in Birmingham, and then again, it's a long story how they try to find me and everything. But I went to Atlantic, and I had
Mhm.
to sing for Doug at the piano, and I was offered a record deal. And
Wow. Was it based off of, I Love You Always Forever? Was that the song that, like, really drew people in to be like,
it really
"Wow,
was, even though they had
Donna's
my other songs too, but I think that was the one, of course. And I think I was just brought in to see if I could really sing at the piano. And and what was lovely, when and that was just the beginning. That was in 94.
Mhm.
And it was amazing. Doug was saying to me, what producer, who do you like? Trevor Horn, Steve Lipson. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these are all my idols. Uh,
Right. To have access
yeah,
to these people, that must have been just like, "Wait, what?"
yeah, it's crazy. And I did get to work with Trevor on a bunch of things. And I met Steve Lipson, but he was in the middle of doing the Annie Lennox record. So there wasn't time, and we really wanted to start it. So I ended up working. I thought I did that record 3 times because the whole record, Now in a Minute, Atlantic were really good in the fact that they said, we love how you've done all your demos. We really just want you to embellish them. So don't change them because I Love You Always Forever is very much the same as my demo. And so I went out to work with Pierre Marchand in Quebec in Canada, and that's another story in itself. But we finished that project. It wasn't working out, and so I ended up coming back to New York and producing that with Kevin Killen,
Mhm.
great Irishman. And even then with I Love You Always Forever, and sorry, I'm probably going round and
No,
round.
no, no, this is perfect. This is what this is about. This is all about
Um,
you, and I love hearing these stories, so don't
yeah.
apologize. Don't
Um,
as long as you wanna go on this, is fine with
that's all
me.
right. No, because it is quite interesting. And
Very interesting.
so we're making the record. I feel I'm making the record again because the first time round, um, a lot of the songs were being stripped apart, and I'm all about that to find. I've worked with a lot of different producers who strive to go down every different avenue before you find what you really need, and then others are very much, you just go into the studio and let's see what happens. So
Mhm,
after doing that the first time round, and it was changing too much. It wasn't sounding, especially I Love You Always Forever. So we started again with Kevin, and all was great. We recorded in New York City, and at the very end of I Love You Always Forever, and this is interesting from Kevin's point of view, he saw I Love You Always Forever and he said, okay, instead of the Corgan one brass, let's get Chris Botti in and let's do a proper brass section. Instead of the Korg organ, let's get the B3 organ and we'll change it up a little. And I was all for experimenting
mhm.
with that. And by the end of it, though, I just felt, to me, it lost a bit of magic. And I think, even Kevin would admit now, oh my God, Donna, you're being like so obsessive. It's great. But then when we went to play the record to Jason Flom at Atlantic, and he listened to I Love You Always Forever, and he said, what do you think of it? Because of course that was the one they were thinking that's going to be the first single, of course.
Mhm.
Um, and I said, I think it's lost a bit of the magic. He said, I agree. It's lost the magic. To what do you think do you know what to do with it? I said, I do. I just need to go in and bring back all those Korg and one sounds and just remix it. And so that's what we did. We went into the studio, brought all the cheesy. And I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Like you look at those sounds now and you think, oh my God, they're so cheesy. But it was the combination of the brass sounds with the organ, and everything was on that M1, the bass drum, the
Oh,
tambourine.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
wild.
all those sounds, the strings, um, you know, um, everything, to be honest, apart from my voice and
Mhm.
um some little guitar atmospherics and some like tiny little keyboard atmospherics in the beginning. Oh, and I did at the end where I do those little ad libs on the piano, I did play that on a proper piano. And so that's what happened. We did that. And even then, um, I mean, we didn't really think, we were just thinking, oh my gosh, I hope this, I'm just so glad we finished the record. I mean, I wasn't even thinking of anything else. And then, so that was completed like at the end of um say 95, and
Mhm.
then Atlantic felt, let's release it in May 96. So we then had to wait a bit longer, and then again, we didn't know what was going to happen, but it was a lot of fun just seeing all these radio stations add the song. And I think it really became one of those radio songs. Thank you, radio. In those days, it really
It
made,
still is, right? I mean, it's still a
yeah.
song that gets I mean, I come from radio. I love the radio. It's sad that it's kind of getting pushed
Oh,
out. I mean, I was on the radio for, like, over 15 years in San Diego
wow.
and San Francisco, and I loved it. I love the radio. I still love the radio. Um, and those songs are the ones that I always think about. I'm like, "Oh, man, I mean, that must have been so cool to hear that." Even I've even had artists on n that are, newer artists that hear their song on the radio and, like, they'll have X million streams on Spotify, but it's like, to hear your song on a radio station in your car, like, it's such a different
There's
feeling from what I
yeah,
hear.
you're right. There's nothing like it. And I just think, I was lucky, really. I do feel there's a right time for everything. And in those days, you know, timing, I mean, I was probably meant to release that then at that time
Mhm.
of the year. It became very much a summer song. And it was so much fun. I mean, in those days, you know, that was our thing. It was doing all those radio promo tours where I remember going to San Diego and all those stations, and then you would perform the song and
You're in like the conference room with the the
yeah,
handful of people they pull in, the sales team or the DJs or whatever. I love seeing those. I
yeah,
mean, it was so cool to have artists come in and you get to watch them just play the song. And I
I know.
mean, at that time that was a hit. And then, it just became, I mean, still to this day, such a big song.
It's amazing. And you know, even when you know you have you know, films that want to use it, and you know it's just fantastic. I mean, it
Mm.
keeps my lights on. And I think as an artist, you always feel you want all your other songs to sort of have a big life like that. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I've realized over the years, I've never been a writer to sort of try and write a commercial song. I've never thought like that. I've just written whatever I wanted to write.
Mhm.
And um and probably, you know, that song, I'm never going to replicate a song like that, probably. It was just one of those moments. And you know, as a writer, I remember before I actually started to write that song at the keyboard, I was walking around Birmingham Town Centre, and I remember thinking, I wonder what it would be like to sort of have one of those songs where you get on stage and you start singing it and everybody knows it. And I
Mhm.
remember writing the melody of that opening part, that the intro, and then getting home and writing the notes down on manuscript paper so I wouldn't forget it. So, you know, and then going to the keyboard, and as I said, it just came together really quickly.
With a song like, having a song like that, I mean, did you feel like once it was, I mean, because the song you had a couple of years at that point, it sounds like in '94, it was the Atlantic was interested, and then you signed, and you record the song 3 or 4 times, and then you put it out in '95. Did it feel
And
kinda like once your name is kind of exposed to the world, or at least in the States and radio and everything, did it feel like kind of 0 to 60 at that moment? It's like, "Okay, now I've just kind of launched off." I mean, I remember seeing your video on, like, VH1 and MTV and all of that stuff. I mean, was it a big,
it
big jump from obviously playing, 5 hours a day, 6 days a week at a piano bars to now you're a household name with this massive song?
yeah, it was a shock because I remember my manager ringing us when we were renting a place in Woodstock, and he was saying, you know, you're number 31 in the Billboard charts, and we don't have a video, so we're going to have to do one, right? You know, we're going to come out and do one. So it was a little bit like that. And then it just like, you know, next thing it was like number 2 in the charts. And it was cute because Martin and I, my husband and I, we had like this wall chart of America on the wall, and we were sticking pins in each station that added it. And
Wow.
it was, I wish we'd taken photographs of that because it would have been so nice to see. It was crazy. And then, you know, then everybody wants you to do a TV show in those days. You know, all
Mhm.
those TV shows were like huge, and the radio shows as well. If you remember, especially in the summertime, it would be an actual like
Yeah, the
show.
concert, right? You'd play, like, the radio station's concert. We used
Exactly.
to have those all the time, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like that took up so much time. And I remember at one point, you know, Atlantic wanted me to go on, which I would have loved to have done that, Everything But the Girls tour, who I loved, and they wanted me to do a support on that.
Mhm.
But my management at the time said, you know, I really feel we want to make the most of this and make I Love Yours Forever and the record a hit
Mhm.
throughout, you know, all over the world. So instead of doing that, I did, you know, for that year, I did every TV show, I think, and radio show all over the world. And that's what we did, which, sometimes has its disadvantages. But, I think I was at a time where I thought, yeah, do you want to, I could say no. Do you want to fly? We might have been in Phoenix, Arizona, and then my manager said, do you want to fly to London tomorrow to do Top of the Pops? And then you'd have to go to France, and then you'd have to go to Australia 3 days later. And we were going,
Mhm.
okay.
It's similar to a tour, right? I mean, but you're flying everywhere else.
Yes, yeah,
And I think obviously that's the decision. That's the right decision because why not? This song is having this huge moment. It's like capitalize on that. Get on all the TV stations, get
yeah,
on the radio. You could always tour it, right? The
yes,
following year or 2 years later, it wouldn't the
exactly.
tour will always be there. I mean,
Yes,
being able to support it in that way
yes.
is huge.
And really, it was the right thing to do because it's still around and it still gets so much love and so much play. And and it has given me the opportunity. I still write and record and make music. And now I just do what I really want to do. I've always done that, but now not being with a label and doing it, myself on my own little label. It's just amazing that that song still does its thing.
Yeah, and you've went on your own, you know, a handful of years ago, right? It was
Yeah,
kind of after
we did
like,
2 records on Atlantic.
and
Yeah.
then you went independent from there on out?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it was one of those things, and I think everybody will say the same thing after, I made Blue Planet, which I felt was a really great record. And
And that had bits I mean, that was also had hits on it too. It wasn't like it was
yeah,
just
Love
nothing.
Him. They did a club version of Love Him, which was like a number one on Billboard um dance charts. A couple of the songs did well in other countries. But nothing topped it like I Love You Always Forever, of course. But it
Yeah.
was the usual thing. Some people had left Atlantic,
Mhm.
and then my management just felt I don't think you're getting enough support, so I think we should leave. So we left Atlantic and then became independent. Yes.
When you after having, that and then I wanna move on to your new album because I really wanna hear the story behind it because it seems
Yeah.
like it's, uh yeah. So you had, you know, when you put out Blue Planet, was the label, like, being like, really trying to push you towards writing another, I Love You Always Forever, or was it like, were you
It was
concerned about being like, "Oh, is this next album gonna do as well?" Or were you just writing 'cause it's not you said you never really wrote to make commercial songs. Was it like, "I'm gonna go into Blue Planet the same way I went into Now in a Minute and just
I
see
think
how
there
this
was a lot
goes?"
of like funny little political personality things going on because when I delivered the album, everybody loved it. I had like some of the head people at Atlantic, ringing me up saying, "Oh my God, these songs are incredible, blah, blah, blah." And then they released I Could Be the One. Um, and it started to do well at radio. And then I think there was some personality things going on within the team at Atlantic. And
Mm,
then the head of radio decided to pull it for some reason. And that's another story in itself, but then switch it to Love Him. And we were all thinking, I don't understand. Anyway, there were a couple of moments like that. So I do, in the beginning, they were very supportive of that record. Um, and then a couple of things happened and then kind of it went a bit haywire.
mhm.
So we just felt then we just, that I Could Be the One we just felt was, a typical radio song that would probably do well.
Mhm.
And we don't know why it was pulled and switched. So there was a few moments like that. And
Yeah,
then coming in and it just wasn't the same. Yeah.
sure. It's interesting because, that you said that, the head of radio pulls it, right? And, I don't think a lot of people understand, that if a radio station is playing a song and Atlantic doesn't want that song to be played, it will not be played anymore.
That's
And and I never had I didn't when I went into radio, I didn't think that was a thing. I thought we got to obviously you would wanna play the single that's doing well because we would look at the other radio stations and see how their ratings were going with that
yeah.
song, and then you would pick and choose, but I had a program director in San Diego. We used to be owned by Clear Channel iHeart, and then we got sold, and then we were independent, and, my program director at the time would always he would listen to the he was a music fan, so he'd go through and he'd be like, "That's not the song. We need to play this one off the album." And we got like season assists a couple of times from major labels saying, "No, that's not the single. We're focusing only on this song right now. That's not the song that we want played." And he would just be like, "Well, I'm gonna play, I'm playing it." And then he did, and then they would ask him to pull it, and he'd get into these battles with those people and be like, "Well, then we're not playing any songs from that artist anymore." It's like this whole
it's a
ego thing.
definitely it's a tricky thing, and it's a shame really because the artist at the end of the day is the one that suffers. But
Right.
it's just, that's what
Because if we were playing Love Him or we were playing Falling off that album, it wouldn't to you, you'd just probably be happy that it was getting love, right? It's like, I don't care if you're playing I Could Be the One or playing this song. This radio station's supporting me and they're playing a song off this album. Who cares? But
exactly.
it's not like that. It's weird.
It's not like
Um,
that. No, it's sad, but it's one of those things that happened, and you just move
yeah.
on. Yeah.
You're throwing a wrench in their plan, right? Essentially.
But they never said to me, "Oh, can you try and write another I Love You Always Forever?" They never said
Okay.
that, which was good.
That
Yeah.
is good. Well,
Yeah.
going into this album, you had some unfortunate news dropped upon you.
Yeah.
And do you wanna talk about that and, like, kind of how that's obviously sparked this album? And going into this, did you know you're writing an album, or was it, I received this news," and you're using that as a way to kind of, you know, get
Yes.
through
Yeah.
it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it was interesting because we celebrated the 25 years of Now in a Minute record, and
Mhm.
we were going to, in fact, we had like small dates booked, all over really to celebrate that. And then of course COVID hit. And
Okay.
then so that was shelved. And then we had all these other songs that have just never been released. And we thought, this is what we're going to do. We're going to release this new record of old songs that have just been sat here. And
Mhm.
it was very much like a pop record. Um, we'll release that. But then, yes, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So, and that was again, I didn't go for my checkups my mammogram in COVID. So by the time I did go, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which was a shock.
Oh,
And
yeah. I mean, during that time, you couldn't get I mean, the hospitals were slammed and you couldn't get in for these routine
it was
checkups that everybody needs, right?
and in fact, when I was having some of those tests, the nurses there were saying, you have no idea how many women are coming in with breast cancer right now because they just skipped their screenings.
That's so
And
sad.
yeah, it is. I'm sure that happens with a lot of other screenings too. But so I was diagnosed, and I had to go through basically when I first saw my first oncologist, she said, right, this is what's going to happen, you have to do the chemo, the surgery, the radiation, and these other immunotherapy drugs. And it's going to be a year out of your life. So you're not going to be able to be doing live stuff, and that you need to take the time to do this. So, okay, so, I'm always writing and doing stuff at home. And so out of the blue, Holmes Ives, who had done a remix of, I released an EP of acoustic songs called I Told You So. And he
Mhm.
had done
It's a
this,
great EP. I love that. I
thank
love what you've done, everything after, even when you left Atlantic. I mean, your catalog of music is brilliant.
Oh, thank you so much. But he had done a lovely remix of I Told You So. And so out of the blue, he just emailed me and he said, "Hey, I've got all these instrumental tracks, and I was just thinking, do you fancy listening to them, seeing if you want to collaborate, write, do something with them?" And so this is really exactly how it was. So I was sat down here one night. I listened to some of them. They were all really cool, like very dark, like sort of electronic, lo-fi vibe. And when I write, melody always comes first to me. So I was singing and I was getting my phone recording little ideas. And then there was a particular one, and I thought, I really like this. And I had all my journals open because during my whole process of going through breast cancer, I kept a journal of how I was feeling
Mhm.
and what I was doing. And so my journal was open and I was reading through what I'd written about cancer being an uninvited messenger, unexpected. Um, and some of the things of how I felt at the time, maybe I wasn't really checking my body enough. I was doing too much for everybody else and not thinking about me. And so I started to sort of write these melodies and lyrics. And so I wrote back to him and I said, I really like them. I'm going to have a go at, one or two of them. So the way I work, and I love doing this, is always recording those first initial ideas straight away, because sometimes they're the magic ones. And you probably get that from a lot of
Yeah.
artists,
So you
sure.
probably keep some of that. I mean, I've had artists, especially during the pandemic, talk about, writing a song and then recording it in their closet with some $100 USB mic and then going to the studio and they can't replicate kind of the emotion behind the vocal. So it's, well, we're just going to use that original take.
Exactly. Yes, because that is the one. And so I started recording a bunch of vocals, and The Messenger was the first one that I did. And I just loved it. And of course, I said, I've got something to send you. And of course, I send him my mix, and I'm just doing everything. Then I'm layering my vocals and I'm mixing it, putting all my effects on that I like. And I sent it to him and he said, "Oh my God, holy shit." Like, it's like, wow, this is really great. And yeah. And so that's how it started. I didn't even tell him I was going through cancer at the time. So,
Really?
and have still never met. He lives in Mexico City, and we've spoken, of course, so many times, but we've never physically met. We've tried to on a few occasions, and things happened, and it hasn't happened yet. So,
Wow. So you've never met, and he even did remixes of a past record of yours, and he
yeah,
sends you this stuff, and that's
it's
pretty interesting. I
crazy.
mean, technology is wild.
I know. So that's how it started. And then I picked on some of the other tracks and we started doing this. And then, like, I think we had about 3 or 4 songs. And again, I didn't mean to write about my cancer journey, but then I don't know, this stuff just kept flooding out. And I think it was a very healing, like a therapy for me in a way. So after about 3 songs, I said to him, these songs are about my breast cancer journey. And he was really surprised. And because I like to write when I write my lyrics, I don't want to, sometimes I don't want people to know, oh, this is all about cancer and chemotherapy. Do you know what I mean?
Right, it's not as just direct, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I like people to interpret the songs in any kind of way they want. So after like a few of these songs we were doing, and we were going to just release an EP, and then we just kept doing more and more, and we just decided, we should do these 10 songs, because these 10 songs are like 10 chapters of my journey. And each song is about a particular moment. And let's do this record. So that's how it's, progressed.
When you said The Messenger was the first one you wrote, and does the album kinda run linear with your experience through breast cancer?
Yeah, I mean, some of the songs aren't exactly like the way the order of the songs is like that. The first one, The Messenger, is about the diagnosis and the start of
Mhm,
treatment. And then the second song, The Mark, is about, no, I suppose it does run a little bit in the right order. The second song, Corridors, is really about this wonderful nurse that I had and going down this maze of corridors in the hospitals. The mark is about the radiation process because we are marked,
mhm.
tattoo marks on our body. Um, yeah, so it is very, very much in order of kind of what happened. Yes.
Wow. And Rooms with a View, is that from just being in the hospital setting and kinda
Yeah,
seeing.
I wrote this song, which is actually the only song that's kind of a little bit different to the rest of it because it's a very sort of electronic, sort of lo-fi kind of like sound with these dark soundscapes, which really love.
Mhm.
And then my son is studying, he's a screen scorer, in
Wow.
university. He's studying to be film screen scorer. So he was home over Christmas and he came up with this piece, and I said, I really love that. And that became Rooms with a View. And that's one that we wrote together, which is kind of lovely. And that's the one
Yeah.
that he arranged for strings. And so it's the one with the more acoustic,
Mhm.
real instruments on that particular song. But I wrote that about it's the culmination of the whole experience because I was in a different room every time I went in for chemo. And
Mhm.
so it was always, I wonder what room I'm going to be in now. Oh, I'm in 9 again. Or, oh, 21's really good because we have that view, that big corner view. And I think when you go into treatment, the views became my focus. It was very interesting because once you're all set up, I had my cold cap on, which is your head's on ice. This is to protect so that you don't lose as much hair. You know, my hands are on ice, my feet are on ice. I have got all these drugs going into me. And so it was amazing. Most of those rooms had a window. So I would always focus on whatever I could see out of that window.
Mhm.
Sometimes the view was pretty gorgeous, and other times it it was just a car park or a tree. And other times there was no view and it was just a painting on the wall. So I wanted that song to be, at the end of the day, it's just a room with a view, but it's all the things that happened to me along the way. And it's really about the people holding space for you because you go through it and you do become a lot stronger and braver going through that stuff, but it's the people that come with you watching you go through that is quite difficult. And
Mhm.
so it's a song about that. And and I just felt that was a really good title for the whole record because
Yeah.
view of every different part of the whole journey.
Was that song the first time you've ever collaborated with your son? As far
we
as, like,
we
writing goes on your album?
Yeah, we did one other song, which is actually on that EP called Stolen Love.
Okay.
We wrote that together, so that's all we've done.
That's
Uh,
exciting, though. That must be really cool to and I'm sure he feels the same way, like, "I'm get to write this song with my mom, like,
it
how
is.
fun."
It's funny. It's funny. He's always so busy, and it's this is hilarious. You won't mind me telling you about this because this is quite funny. Because we've also been making this film, a short film about the journey, and that's another thing. But using this music with the film,
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, Arch, I really need you to do some transitions. Just treat it like you're working on a film now. And he's going, I'm so busy, Mum. And I said, okay, I know. And I said, I really need you to do this weekend, can you? And it's just like, I said, you know that great piano. He like still loves making, building Legos. I said, you know that amazing piano Lego? I'll buy you that. He said, really? You're kidding?
That is a cool Lego. My younger son or both of them actually are way into Legos, and you go to the Lego store, and it's like, yeah, that's a cool one for sure.
I think, when you've been into Lego at a young age, and I mean, some of the kids that have all grown up now, they're still into it. It's,
Yeah, that store is always like, you have to wait outside, and they have to tell you, "Okay, you can come in now." Like,
I
there's, like,
know.
an old Nintendo one and, like, there's
Yeah,
full scenes from, like, movies.
it's
It's
amazing.
wild.
Yeah, part of our house is a Lego house with many Legos. Great Legos. But he's been great because I asked him to write some, the end of the credits of this film and some transitions, and so it's been really great having him do that. And I keep saying to him, the more you learn now, oh my God, Arch, you can just we can do a whole record together. And he's going, well, let's see about that.
Oh, I had to squeeze you in, mom. I've got so much
Yeah,
work
yeah.
to do. Was it difficult to like, I don't know how far through the process you were when you started the album or like really dove into writing it. Like, was it hard to go back and read some of that journal or and like kind of put yourself back in that situation?
It was. There are moments of difficulty, and it's interesting with this film we've been making. I went back to my journals yet again, and it's amazing how much you forget. Where I just narrated some dialogue where I was just reading from my journals to be put in this film, and I was reading them thinking, oh my God, I totally forgot how hard that moment was. And it does bring back those feelings, of course, but and I mean, the other day was a day of checkups for me at the hospital. I still every 6 months I have to go, but everything is good and I feel great. And yeah, it's hard at times reading them,
Mhm.
but I feel maybe I had to go through that for a reason. I've changed a lot as a person, I feel, in the sense I really think of, is this going to be good for me now? I mean, I'm not going to like really go crazy and race like a lunatic to be able to do that if I don't need to. So it's
Mhm.
it's changed me in that way, if you know what I mean.
100%. So are you cancer free or in remission at this
Yeah.
point?
I
Oh,
mean,
that's
I
amazing.
I I remember I said to my oncologist last year, like, so am I cancer free? She said, yes, we took everything away. But like anybody that's had cancer, um, and I try not to read too much about it because often sometimes, in years to come, something pops back. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right.
I just I just feel I'm gonna be great and I feel good and I'm all good. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's all that matters. And that's huge. I'm so happy for you because
Thank you.
yeah, that must have been obviously the scariest moment ever receiving that news.
It
Um,
is. It's scary because you don't know anything, and it's the fear of the unknown, isn't it? And it's very interesting. Once you start on the roller coaster of it, you just do it. And you do, it just gets easier because this is the plan for you for these next few months. It's very interesting how the start of it is the scariest, most terrifying thing ever. And then once you're in it, it's not like that. And also when you go into those cancer hospitals and it's like, oh my God, everybody in here has cancer. Or and
mm,
their caregiver or husband, wife is with them to go through it. And it's like, why is that? I mean, this is like this is crazy. Why are so many people, being diagnosed?
yeah, getting this right. And I'm
And
sure you met a lot of people in there. I mean, probably some fantastic people just
yes,
sitting. I mean, you have to be in there for a long time, right? And multiple times
yes,
a week. And
yeah. But people are incredible, and it always helps. Like for me, having other women that went through it that became like a really good support group for me.
mhm,
Telling you, you're going to do this and you're going to be fine. this is what it's going to be like when you go through this. But you know, it's amazing having those other people with you. And I think most of us that have had that just want to get on with life now and just, you know, we don't want to read, like, I'm not going to read the side effects of that drug because why? I got to
Right, right. What
anyway.
benefit is it gonna be for you?
And for me, I think I was always somebody that I just don't take any medication unless I really have to. Even if I
Mhm.
have a headache, I won't take anything unless it's like I'm really sick.
Mhm.
So that was a whole headspace for me was I'm now going to have to fill my body with these drugs that
Right.
I'm going to have to do it, you know, which I
Yeah,
don't want to, but I got no choice.
sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, are you doing any special show or anything big for the release of the album?
No, I haven't, you know, I haven't really had time to look at that. I have done, I've played at a couple of things to do with the breast cancer stuff where I did kind of like showcase a few of these songs, which was amazing to do
Cool.
that. And then I'm going to start, actually, I'm going to do an acoustic show, which I'm so excited about with my longtime friend Tony Franklin, the amazing bass player. And we're going to do an acoustic show at the end of August um, in Savannah. And we're hoping then it's going to start, we're going to start to be able to do some more. So I'd like
In
to do,
Georgia? In Savannah, Georgia?
yes, yeah.
Wow, that I'm in Nashville now. That's not too far from me.
Oh, well, I'll keep you posted and let you know.
I'd
Come.
love to come,
But
yeah.
you know, we're gonna do something together, and I hope that leads on to more because we have a you know a great um we work so well together and we know each other so well, and I'd like to do more with this, but it's I don't know, we just have to sort of wait for the right moment and when it's good for me to do that. Yeah.
100%. Donna, thank you so much for telling for being here and being so vulnerable and telling me this story. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do have one more question for you. You kind of
Yeah.
answered it early on, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. If you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yes. Practice, practice, practice. I think it's just you know, it is hard starting out as an artist, and I think it's it's if you can get so much experience and it's playing live, you know, recording, finding your sound. Don't worry about making mistakes along the way. Just go out there and try things. And you just have to believe. I think if you love what you're doing, other people are going to love it too. I used to say that to myself doing those piano bars, and sometimes a lot of people would be talking over you, and then suddenly you'd find like these pockets of people that were really listening. And I used to think that's all that matters. So it's just still having that belief that you're doing something you absolutely love, but you have to work hard at it. There's no cutting corners here. You've got to go and sing and do so much live and studio work just to find who you really are and get good
Love
at
it.
it. Bringing it backward.